Hotels. They are transient spaces, temporary homes for weary travelers, bustling hubs of human activity. Millions of people pass through their doors each year, each carrying their own stories, their own secrets, their own joys, and their own sorrows. But what happens when those stories linger long after the guests have checked out? What happens when the echoes of past lives become trapped within the walls, replaying themselves for an unsuspecting audience? These aren't just tales of creaky floorboards or flickering lights. These are accounts from individuals who, while seeking a comfortable night's rest, found themselves checked into a nightmare from which there was no escape. They are real, and they happened because someone just needed a place to stay. Story 1. The Woman in Room 311. This first chilling account comes from a business traveler named David, a man who spent a significant portion of his life in hotels, accustomed to the sterile anonymity of hotel rooms and the predictable rhythm of life on the road. This incident occurred during a business trip to a historic hotel in a major city in the American Midwest in the fall of 2018. The hotel was old, but well-maintained, with a grand lobby and a sense of old-world charm. David was assigned to room 311, a spacious corner room with a large window overlooking the city. His first night was uneventful. He checked in late, had a quick dinner at the hotel restaurant, and went to bed early, exhausted from a long day of meetings. He slept soundly, undisturbed by the usual creaks and groans of an old building. The second night, however, was a different story. He was woken around 2 a.m. by a faint, rhythmic sound. It was a soft, almost imperceptible tapping coming from the corner of the room. He initially dismissed it as the sound of the old radiator, or perhaps a loose pipe in the wall. But the tapping continued, slow and deliberate, a maddeningly persistent sound that seemed to drill into his consciousness. He turned on the bedside lamp and looked around the room. Nothing seemed out of place. The tapping stopped. He was about to turn off the light when he heard another sound, a soft, mournful sigh, coming from the armchair in the corner of the room. He froze, his eyes wide, and stared at the chair. It was empty, but he had heard the sigh as clearly as if someone had been sitting right there. He tried to rationalize it. The wind, the old building, his tired mind playing tricks on him. But a profound sense of unease began to creep over him. He left the light on for the rest of the night, unable to shake the feeling that he was not alone in the room. The next day, he mentioned the strange noises to the front desk clerk, who smiled politely and assured him it was probably just the old plumbing. But David noticed a flicker of something in the clerk's eyes, a hint of recognition that he couldn't quite place. He decided to do some research on the hotel's history, a morbid curiosity, driving him. He discovered that the hotel had a dark past. In the 1930s, a young woman had taken her own life in one of the rooms on the 3rd floor. She had been a guest at the hotel, a heartbroken woman who had been jilted by her lover. The article didn't specify the room number, but David had a sinking feeling he knew which one it was. That night, the activity in his room escalated. The tapping returned, louder and more insistent than before. The sighing became more frequent, now accompanied by what sounded like soft, muffled sobs. He could feel a distinct cold spot in the corner of the room, a pocket of icy air that seemed to defy the warmth of the heater. He tried to ignore it, to focus on his work, but the sounds were impossible to block out. He felt a growing sense of despair, a profound sadness that seemed to emanate from the room itself, seeping into his own consciousness. The climax of his stay occurred on his final night. He was woken from a fitful sleep by a loud crash. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding, and saw that the heavy armchair in the corner of the room had been overturned, and standing beside it was the figure of a young woman. She was translucent, almost ethereal, her form shimmering in the dim light from the window. She was wearing a simple, old-fashioned dress, and her long, dark hair was disheveled. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with an unbearable sadness. She was weeping silently, tears streaming down her translucent cheeks. David was paralyzed by fear. He couldn't scream, couldn't move, could only stare at the apparition before him. The woman slowly turned her head and looked at him, her eyes locking with his. In that moment, he felt a wave of her despair wash over him, a crushing weight of sorrow and betrayal that was so intense it almost brought him to his knees. And then she spoke, her voice a soft, ethereal whisper that seemed to come from all around him. "He promised he would come back," she said, her voice filled with a heartbreaking anguish. "He promised." And then, as quickly as she had appeared, she faded away, leaving behind only the overturned armchair and the lingering scent of old perfume. David didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the empty corner of the room, the woman's words echoing in his mind. He checked out of the hotel at dawn, not bothering to pack his bags properly, just throwing everything into his suitcase and fleeing. He never stayed in that hotel again. He still has nightmares about the woman in room 311, about her sad, empty eyes, and about the crushing weight of her despair. He never found out if the story he had read was true, or if the woman he had seen was the same one from the article. But he knows, with a chilling certainty, that some hotels are not just buildings, but repositories of human emotion, and some guests never truly check out. And sometimes, when you're alone in a hotel room, you might find that you're sharing the space with a history far more tragic and terrifying than you could ever imagine. Story 2. The Children of the Fourth Floor. This next unsettling account comes from a young family. The Millers, Mark, Sarah, and their 2 young children, 7-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Tom, who were on a cross-country road trip in the summer of 2021. They had been driving for hours and decided to stop for the night at a roadside motel in a small, isolated town in the middle of the desert. The motel was old and a bit run down, but it was clean and affordable, and the family was too tired to be picky. They were given a room on the 2nd floor, a standard 2-bed room with a small bathroom and a window overlooking the empty desert landscape. The children were excited, treating the motel stay as an adventure. They quickly claimed their beds and began to explore the room, their laughter echoing in the quiet motel. Mark and Sarah were just happy to be out of the car, looking forward to a good night's sleep before continuing their journey the next day. As the evening wore on, they began to hear strange noises coming from the room above them. It sounded like children running back and forth, their footsteps heavy and rhythmic, accompanied by faint, high-pitched giggles. Mark and Sarah initially dismissed it as another family with energetic children, a common occurrence in motels. But the running and giggling continued late into the night, long after most children would have been asleep. It was a constant, almost frantic energy, a relentless thumping and laughing that seemed to go on for hours. Around midnight, Mark, his patience wearing thin, decided to call the front desk to complain about the noise. The night clerk, a tired-looking man with a weary voice, sounded surprised. He informed Mark that there were no other guests on the 4th floor. In fact, the entire 4th floor had been closed for renovations for several months. Mark was taken aback. He was certain the noises were coming from directly above them. The clerk, however, insisted that the 4th floor was empty and that the noises must be coming from somewhere else. Mark hung up the phone, a sense of unease settling over him. He and Sarah listened intently. The running and giggling continued, as clear as before. They even heard what sounded like a ball bouncing, a rhythmic thud-thud-thud that seemed to shake the ceiling. They tried to rationalize it. Perhaps the sound was traveling from another part of the motel, or maybe the clerk was mistaken. But the noises were too distinct, too close to be coming from anywhere but the room directly above them. Their own children, Lily and Tom, seemed oblivious to the sounds. They were fast asleep, exhausted from the long day of travel. Mark and Sarah, however, found it impossible to sleep. The relentless thumping and giggling from the empty 4th floor was unnerving, a constant reminder that something was not right in this isolated desert motel. The climax of their stay occurred in the early hours of the morning. The running and giggling suddenly stopped, replaced by an unnerving silence. Mark and Sarah, relieved, were just starting to drift off to sleep when they heard a new sound. A soft, hesitant scratching at their hotel room door. It was a faint, almost timid sound, like a small animal trying to get in. Mark got out of bed and cautiously approached the door. He looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. He was about to turn away when he heard a soft, childlike whisper from the other side of the door. "Can we come in and play?" it said, its voice a high-pitched, innocent plea. Mark's blood ran cold. He knew it wasn't his own children. They were sound asleep in their beds. He looked through the peephole again. The hallway was still empty, but then he saw them. Two small, shadowy figures, standing at the far end of the hallway just outside the elevator. They were the size of children, but their forms were indistinct, their features obscured by the dim light. They were holding hands, and they were staring directly at his door. He backed away from the door, his heart pounding. He woke Sarah, whispering what he had seen. They huddled together, listening as the scratching at the door grew more insistent, more desperate. The whispers continued, now joined by a second voice, a chorus of two children begging to be let in. "We're lonely," they whispered. "We just want to play." Mark and Sarah didn't know what to do. They were trapped in their room with their sleeping children, while two unseen entities were trying to get in. They pushed the heavy dresser in front of the door, a flimsy barricade against the unknown. The scratching and whispering continued for what felt like an eternity, a relentless assault on their nerves. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. They waited, listening, but there was only silence. They didn't sleep for the rest of the night. They sat in the dark, listening to the sound of their own breathing, waiting for the sun to rise. At dawn, they packed their bags in a frantic rush, waking their still sleeping children and carrying them to the car. They checked out of the motel without a word, not daring to look at the night clerk, not wanting to know the history of the 4th floor. They never stopped at a roadside motel again. They still have nightmares about the running and giggling, about the scratching at the door, and about the two shadowy figures in the hallway. They never found out who or what the children of the 4th floor were. But they know, with a chilling certainty, that some places hold the echoes of past tragedies, and some voices never truly fade away. And sometimes, when you're on a long, lonely road, the most terrifying thing you can find is not an empty motel, but one that is still occupied by guests who have long since checked out. Story 3. The Bellhop's Last Shift. Our final, and perhaps most chilling, account comes from a former bellhop named Michael, who worked at a grand, historic hotel in a bustling East Coast city for over 20 years. The hotel, built in the late 1800s, was renowned for its opulent architecture, its celebrity guests, and its long-standing rumors of being profoundly haunted. Michael, a pragmatic and no-nonsense individual, had always dismissed the ghost stories as mere folklore, amusing anecdotes for the guests. That is, until his last shift. Michael was scheduled for the graveyard shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. on his final night before retirement. He was looking forward to a quiet night, a chance to reflect on his long career, and perhaps a few last tips from late-arriving guests. The hotel was mostly empty, with only a handful of guests checked in. He spent the early hours of his shift polishing the brass, straightening the lobby furniture, and making small talk with the night auditor. Around 3 a.m., he received a call from room 707. A guest was requesting extra towels. Michael grabbed a fresh stack of towels and took the elevator to the 7th floor. The hallway was dimly lit, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the building's old machinery. He walked down the long corridor, his footsteps echoing until he reached room 707. He knocked gently on the door. No answer. He knocked again, a little louder. Still no answer. He was about to turn away when he heard a faint scratching sound coming from inside the room. It was a light, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails against wood. He pressed his ear to the door, listening intently. The scratching continued, slow and deliberate. He tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly pushed the door open, peering inside. The room was dark, the curtains drawn. He could see the faint outline of furniture, but nothing else. The scratching continued, coming from the far side of the room near the window. He stepped inside, calling out, "Hello? Housekeeping?" No response. He fumbled for the light switch, found it, and flipped it on. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made, the furniture undisturbed. The scratching stopped. Michael frowned. He was certain he had heard something. He walked toward the window, where the scratching had seemed to originate. He saw nothing unusual. But then, he noticed a small, antique wooden rocking horse in the corner of the room. It was gently rocking back and forth, slowly, rhythmically, as if someone had just been sitting on it. Michael's blood ran cold. He knew the hotel didn't have any rocking horses in its rooms. And even if it did, it wouldn't be rocking on its own. He backed away from the rocking horse, his heart pounding. He felt a sudden, intense cold spot in the center of the room, a chill that seemed to penetrate his very bones. He heard a faint, childlike giggle, coming from directly behind him. He spun around, but there was nothing there. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, and a faint, sweet scent, like old-fashioned baby powder, wafted through the room. Michael, despite his years of skepticism, knew he was not alone. He felt a profound sense of dread, a chilling realization that the ghost stories he had dismissed were all too real. He backed out of the room, his eyes fixed on the rocking horse, which continued to sway gently back and forth. He closed the door behind him, his hands trembling, and practically ran to the elevator. He spent the rest of his shift in the lobby, refusing to go back upstairs. He didn't tell the night auditor what he had seen, knowing he would be dismissed as a senile old man. He just wanted his shift to end, to get out of that hotel and never look back. He checked out at 7 a.m., his retirement a bittersweet relief. He never returned to the hotel, not even for a visit. Michael still has nightmares about the rocking horse, about the cold spot, and about the faint, childlike giggle. He never found out who or what was in room 707. But he knows, with a chilling certainty, that some hotels are not just buildings, but living entities, filled with the echoes of past lives, and some guests never truly check out. And sometimes, when you're working the graveyard shift, you might find that you're not just serving the living, but the dead, and the secrets they hold are far more disturbing than any tip you could ever receive. Conclusion: these three accounts, drawn from the chilling realities of haunted hotels, serve as a stark reminder that even in the most luxurious and seemingly safe environments, darkness can lurk. Each story, unique in its manifestation, shares a common thread: the profound vulnerability of being a transient guest in a space steeped in history, where the echoes of past lives can manifest in terrifying ways. David, the business traveler, learned that the anonymity of a hotel room can be a deceptive facade, hiding the lingering despair of a past tragedy. His encounter with the woman in room 311 shattered his sense of security, leaving him with a chilling understanding that some guests never truly check out, their sorrow forever imprinted on the very fabric of the building. The Millers, the family on a road trip, discovered that even a seemingly innocuous roadside motel can harbor unsettling secrets. Their terrifying night with the children of the fourth floor revealed that some voices never truly fade away, and some playful spirits are far from innocent. And Michael, the pragmatic bellhop, found that his years of skepticism were no match for the undeniable presence of the supernatural. His last shift, marked by the rocking horse and the childlike giggle in room 707, prove that some hotels are not just buildings but living entities, filled with the echoes of past lives, and some secrets are far more disturbing than any tip he could ever receive. These narratives are not mere fiction, they are echoes of real incidents, whispers from the dark corners of hospitality. They remind us that the trust we place in the comfort and safety of a hotel, in the assumption that a temporary stay is a harmless one, can be profoundly misplaced. The haunted hotel horror stories serve as a powerful cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to remember that when you check into a hotel, you might not be alone, and the secrets you uncover might just be your last. The chilling reality of haunted hotel horror stories lies in their insidious nature. Unlike the overt threats of a slasher film, these horrors often manifest subtly, gradually eroding a guest's sense of security and sanity. The very familiarity of a hotel room, the bed, the bathroom, the television, becomes a twisted parody of comfort when an unseen presence begins to manipulate the environment. Every creak, every shadow, every misplaced object takes on a sinister new meaning, turning a temporary sanctuary into a psychological prison. The isolation of a hotel room, often sought for privacy, can become a terrifying amplifier for fear when you realize you're not alone, and the unseen entity is playing a game with you. These stories also highlight the limitations of our understanding of the paranormal. We tend to categorize and explain everything, but some phenomena, some entities, simply do not fit into our neat little boxes. The tapping, the sighs, the shadowy figures, the disembodied voices, these are not easily dismissed as natural occurrences. They hint at something else, something ancient and malevolent that has existed in these places long before humans ever built structures upon them. The terror comes from the realization that we are not at the top of the food chain, that there are forces at play that we cannot comprehend, let alone control. Furthermore, the psychological impact of these experiences is profound and long-lasting. The victims are not just physically unharmed in most cases, but their sense of reality is shattered. Their trust in safe spaces, in solitude, in their own judgment, is irrevocably broken. They carry the weight of their encounters with them, a constant reminder that the world is far stranger and more dangerous than they ever imagined. The nightmares, the paranoia, the inability to ever truly relax in a hotel room again. These are the true scars of a haunted hotel stay gone horribly wrong. These narratives, while disturbing, serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment. They are cautionary tales, echoing the primal fears of intrusion, isolation, and the unknown. They remind us that the most terrifying monsters often exist in the unseen corners of our minds or in the ancient, untamed places of the world. The hotel guest, seeking rest and respite, becomes a proxy for the audience, experiencing the gradual erosion of safety and the terrifying realization that some secrets are best left buried. The psychological impact is profound, leaving the victims forever altered, their sense of security irrevocably shattered. The stories are not just about what happened, but about the lingering dread, the constant vigilance, and the chilling knowledge that the comfort of a hotel can, in an instant, become a stage for terror. Ultimately, these stories are a testament to the fact that horror doesn't always need a supernatural explanation. Sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones that could happen to anyone at any time in any seemingly safe place. The hotel guest, stepping into the heart of a building's history, inadvertently steps into its nightmares, and the chilling truth is, once you've seen what lurks beneath the surface of hospitality, you can never truly feel safe again. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you check into a hotel, you're not just booking a room. You're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. So, the next time you check into a hotel, remember these tales. Remember David, the Millers, and Michael. Remember that behind every closed door, Every hushed hallway, every seemingly empty room, there might be a story waiting to unfold. A story that will change you forever. Because in the quiet, temporary spaces of a hotel, the line between guest and victim can become terrifyingly thin, and the horrors that unfold are often the ones you never saw coming. The allure of a new place, a fresh start, can be a powerful draw, but sometimes that allure masks a darkness that has been waiting patiently for its next unsuspecting visitor. For once you've experienced the true terror of a haunted hotel, the comfort of a warm bed and a locked door will never feel quite the same. The echoes of these real incidents serve as a stark warning. When you check into a hotel, you're not just booking a room. You're potentially opening yourself up to a reality far more disturbing than any fiction. A reality where the past is never truly dead, and the spirits of those who suffered within these walls are always eager for new company. So, sleep tight if you can. You never know who might be watching from the shadows, or who might be waiting to check into your nightmares.